What happens when a humble aircraft mechanic saves a billionaire's life, and she asks him the most shocking question imaginable? This story will leave you speechless. Laughter erupted across the pristine airport tarmac when a weathered pickup truck rumbled to a stop and a grease-stained mechanic named Marcus Sullivan climbed out. He'd been summoned to repair a tech mogul's private aircraft, but nobody expected this blue-collar worker to even understand the sophisticated machinery, let alone fix it. As corporate executives snickered behind climate-controlled glass windows, one woman observed in complete silence. Sophia Westbrook, the aircraft's brilliant owner and CEO. Within moments, she would stride onto that runway, halt everything, and pose a question that would send shockwaves around the globe. Before we continue, your engagement helps us share more incredible stories like this one. Now let's dive deeper into this extraordinary tale. The morning mist still clung to Ocean View Private Airport at 6:47 a.m. when Marcus arrived. Dawn painted the sky in soft purples and grays while a sharp wind cut through his faded work shirt. His steel-toed boots echoed against the concrete with each determined step. The emergency call had jolted him awake just after sunrise. Aircraft malfunction. Critical situation. No questions asked, just results. The voice had been tense, offering substantial payment for immediate service. The sleek private jet stood majestically in the distance, surrounded by polished executives in expensive suits, Italian leather shoes, and designer overcoats. They barely glanced up when Marcus approached, then returned to their hushed conversations and knowing smiles. One leaned toward another, whispering something that triggered muffled laughter. Marcus paid them no attention. He'd encountered their type countless times. Boardroom warriors with impressive titles, but zero practical knowledge about machinery. What truly mattered was the aircraft itself. Lives hung in the balance. He set down his well-worn toolbox beside the jet, opened the engine access panel, and immediately froze. What he discovered nearly stopped his heart cold. The fuel distribution line had a severe crack, not just damaged, but partially melted. The protective insulation had completely deteriorated. The securing clamp showed dangerous corrosion. Most alarming of all, a fuel leak had formed perilously close to the ignition system. Whoever had last serviced this aircraft should never work in aviation again. A single electrical spark would have turned this jet into a fireball at 30,000 feet. Marcus realized he had minutes, not hours, to prevent disaster. With no backup support, no assistant, and no time for lengthy explanations, he rolled up his sleeves and began working. His experienced hands moved with the precision born from decades of repairing engines in barns, on remote highways, and under the scorching heat of Texas summers. Airport personnel gathered to watch in fascination. Several pulled out smartphones to record videos. He could sense their skeptical judgment like heat radiating against his back. But nothing would deter him from his mission. Inside the luxurious terminal, Sophia Westbrook observed every detail unfolding outside. She remained silent while her staff exchanged amused comments and dismissive gestures. Sophia wasn't merely another wealthy CEO. She represented technological royalty. Her father had built Westbrook Aerospace from nothing, and she had transformed it into a global empire. She understood aircraft intimately, having piloted them, designed them, and even raced them competitively. What she witnessed through that glass window absolutely astounded her. She leaned forward, studying the scene intently. Who was this mysterious man with oil-darkened hands and worn denim who moved with surgical precision? Why was he the only person who had identified what her highly trained pilots had completely missed? Suddenly, the jet's instrument lights flickered to life. A gentle mechanical hum pulsed through the aircraft like a returning heartbeat. The machine was functioning again. Her breath caught in her throat. She stood slowly, eyes still fixed on the man outside. Everyone else saw just another mechanic. She recognized something entirely different. In less than 3 minutes, she would walk down that runway and alter both their destinies forever. The moment the jet roared back to full operation, all laughter ceased immediately. The executives behind the glass stared in stunned disbelief, their smug expressions evaporating as the steady humming grew stronger and more confident. One of them whispered in amazement, "That repair should have required hours of work." But Marcus had already secured the engine panel. He didn't celebrate his success or seek recognition. He simply cleaned his hands with an old cloth, shouldered his tool bag, and turned to leave quietly. That's when the private jet's passenger door opened with a soft mechanical whir. The boarding steps lowered gradually, each metallic click resonating like thunder across the now silent tarmac. A pair of elegant heels touched the metal steps, sleek, black, commanding absolute attention. Sophia Westbrook descended with the natural grace of someone born into influence and power. But something different flickered in her eyes. This wasn't the calculated gaze of a woman accustomed to getting everything she desired. This was pure curiosity, sharp, purposeful, unshakable. Marcus stopped mid-stride when he saw her approaching. She wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit with silver buttons. Her auburn hair pulled back in a sophisticated style, her stride radiating confidence and determination. Every step she took made the suited men behind her shift uncomfortably in their expensive shoes. She walked directly past them, past the silent engineers, past the staff who had been laughing just moments earlier. She walked straight up to the man covered in engine grease, and the entire world seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. "You repaired it," she said quietly, her voice carrying a note of genuine admiration. Marcus blinked in surprise. "Yes, I am. More than that, you saved it. My chief pilot informed me the engine was damaged beyond any reasonable repair. He said we'd need to ground the aircraft for at least a week." He missed a melted fuel line that was nearly touching the ignition system. Marcus explained calmly, brushing dust from his shirt. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in sudden realization and understanding. "You could have simply walked away from the situation." "I don't walk away from potential fire hazards that could kill people." A moment of profound silence passed between them. Then Sophia smiled. Not the practiced smile she wore in boardrooms and media interviews, but something authentic that came from somewhere deep and real. It was small, honest, and it startled everyone watching this unexpected interaction. "Do you know who I am?" she asked with genuine curiosity. "Yes. Sophia Westbrook, Westbrook Aerospace. You revolutionized sustainable aviation technology." "You don't seem particularly impressed by that." "I'm not here to be impressed. I'm here to solve problems and prevent disasters." Sophia studied him carefully, then turned toward her staff with newfound authority. Everyone inside the terminal. Now. No exceptions. No one dared object to her direct command. The glass doors clicked shut behind them with finality. Now it was just the two of them alone on the vast tarmac, with only the wind and distant aircraft engines as witnesses. "I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who make grand promises and deliver very little," she said, her voice softer now, more vulnerable. "You're the first person I've met who accomplished the exact opposite." Marcus gave a small, humble nod. "I was just doing what needed to be done." Sophia took a deep breath, as if making a decision that would fundamentally alter everything in her carefully planned life. She looked at the expansive sky, then back at the man who had potentially saved her life and the lives of everyone who would have flown in that aircraft. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the sincerity in her eyes. "What would you say," she asked slowly, deliberately, "if someone like me asked you something completely unreasonable?" Marcus didn't move or flinch. "That would depend entirely on what you're asking." "How unreasonable are we talking about?" A pause that seemed to stretch forever. "What if I asked you to marry me?" For what felt like an eternity, neither of them spoke a single word. The wind whispered across the runway like a secret being shared. A bird took flight from a nearby pole, its wings catching the morning light. And Marcus, still wearing torn jeans, boots stained with aviation fuel, and fingers blackened with engine grease, looked directly at the billionaire CEO with the calm composure of a man who had absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. Marcus didn't laugh or act shocked. He didn't stumble over his words, try to appear cool, or assume it was some kind of elaborate joke. He simply stood there, his steady gaze locked on hers, as if trying to understand the deeper meaning behind her extraordinary question. Most men would have panicked, made awkward jokes, or immediately assumed she wasn't serious. But Marcus had spent too many years repairing things that others had given up on as hopeless. He understood the crucial difference between meaningless noise and genuine communication. And this definitely wasn't noise. Sophia waited for his response. Her expression remained unreadable, but her breathing was slightly unsteady, as if the words had surprised even her. She wasn't a woman accustomed to waiting for anything, but she stood perfectly still, hoping the man in front of her wouldn't treat her proposal like a punchline. Marcus wiped perspiration from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a small smudge. "You don't even know me." "That's exactly why I'm asking." He raised an eyebrow in confusion. "Come again?" Sophia stepped forward, her heels clicking against the concrete like a countdown timer. "I've been proposed to 23 times. I actually counted them. By men in expensive suits who had memorized my net worth and convinced themselves that was love." She paused, her voice catching slightly with emotion. "But you walked into this crisis with nothing but a wrench, saved my aircraft, risked your own safety, and asked for absolutely nothing in return." "I didn't do it for you specifically," Marcus said honestly. "I did it because someone had to prevent a tragedy." "Exactly," she whispered with growing conviction. "That's what makes this real." He looked down, suddenly very aware of the dirt embedded under his fingernails and the fraying collar of his work shirt. "You want to marry a mechanic?" "I want to marry the only man here who didn't try to impress me with false charm or calculated flattery." Behind them, lights from the terminal glowed in the gathering evening dusk. Curious eyes peered through the glass windows as whispers spread like wildfire through the building. Smartphones were likely recording everything, but Sophia didn't care about any of that. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing a role or maintaining an image. She was simply being herself, authentic, vulnerable, human. Marcus finally broke the contemplative silence. "You're completely serious about this?" "As serious as a heart attack." He studied her intently for a long moment, not focusing on her expensive clothes or impressive title, but trying to see the actual person beneath all the external trappings. "Then take off your heels." Sophia blinked in surprise. "What? If you're truly serious about this, take off those shoes. Come walk with me for 5 minutes. No corporate titles, no media headlines, just two regular people on equal ground." She hesitated for only a brief second. Then she leaned on one foot, kicked off one heel, then the other. Barefoot on the warm concrete, Sophia Westbrook, tech billionaire and aerospace pioneer, followed a humble mechanic into the golden sunset. They walked past the gleaming jet, past the silhouettes of silent staff members still watching from inside. She didn't ask where they were going. She simply matched his steady pace, step for step, trusting him completely. Marcus led her to the edge of the airfield where old aircraft hangars stood like forgotten monuments to aviation history. He pulled open a rusted door that creaked loudly on its hinges and gestured for her to enter first. Inside wasn't what she expected at all. There were no sophisticated machines or high-tech equipment, just a simple folding table, a weather-beaten chair, and walls lined with old photographs. Pictures of vintage aircraft, skilled mechanics, and one small boy in miniature overalls standing proudly beside a man who looked exactly like Marcus, only older and beaming with pride. "My father built his entire life around fixing engines that others said were beyond repair," Marcus said quietly, his voice filled with respect and love. I watched him restore aircraft that everyone else had written off as hopeless. When he passed away, I inherited this hangar along with his philosophy. He gestured around the humble space. I've kept the lights off most of the time because real dreams don't run on electricity. They run on determination, skill, and refusing to give up. Sophia turned slowly, taking in every detail with new appreciation. Every man I've ever met wanted access to my business empire. Marcus continued thoughtfully. I honestly don't care about any of that. But if you're genuinely offering something real and meaningful, then don't expect champagne celebrations and fireworks displays. He paused, meeting her eyes directly. Expect scraped knuckles from honest work, midnight emergency repairs, and sharing meals sitting on toolboxes instead of in fancy restaurants. Sophia smiled slowly, genuinely. That sounds absolutely perfect. For the first time that day, Marcus smiled back, not because he was charmed by her wealth or status, but because he truly believed she meant every word. Outside the hangar, the wind had picked up significantly, but inside their temporary shelter, everything felt peaceful and still. The following morning, golden sunlight poured through the dusty windows of the old hangar like liquid amber. Sophia sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, wearing Marcus's oversized flannel shirt and sipping strong coffee from a chipped ceramic mug that had seen better days. Her designer dress lay neatly folded beside her, almost forgotten like a costume from a previous life. In that quiet moment, she looked nothing like a billionaire CEO, just a woman who had finally learned how to truly exhale and be herself. Marcus sat across from her with a wrench in his capable hands, speaking without looking up from his work. You actually stayed the entire night. I said I would. Most people in your position would have called a private driver and found the nearest luxury suite by now. I already know what 5-star treatment feels like, Sophia said, then added with a quiet, contented smile. I wanted to discover what 5:00 a.m. with you felt like instead. Marcus chuckled softly. It's loud, it smells like engine grease and motor oil, and it starts with black coffee and cold feet. She raised a mug in a mock toast. To cold feet and new adventures then. But outside their peaceful hangar, the world had certainly not paused or forgotten about them. News was spreading rapidly. A tech billionaire had gone missing. Her private jet was grounded under mysterious circumstances. Security footage had been leaked, and her name was trending across all social media platforms. What made the situation even more intriguing was the circulating rumor that someone had witnessed her walking barefoot across an airport tarmac, with a man wearing oil-stained work clothes. Back at the Westbrook Aerospace corporate headquarters, absolute chaos reigned supreme. David Richardson, the chief operating officer and Sophia's longtime business advisor, stood red-faced at the head of the polished conference table. This situation is completely unacceptable, he declared angrily. We have journalists camping outside our building, shareholders panicking about stock prices, and the board of directors calling emergency meetings every hour. A younger executive leaned forward nervously. Sir, what if she's simply choosing love over corporate obligations? David scoffed dismissively. She's a Westbrook. Westbrooks don't chase romantic fantasies. They build lasting business legacies and maintain their responsibilities. But one person at that tension-filled table, Sophia's godmother, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret, said absolutely nothing during the heated discussion. She had watched Sophia grow up in corporate boardrooms and cry alone in them. She remembered birthdays missed due to business meetings, laughter that seemed forced and rehearsed, and smiles worn like masks during public appearances. And now, for the first time in many years, Sophia was completely off script, following her heart instead of a predetermined corporate plan. Margaret sipped her tea slowly, hiding a rare but genuine smile of approval. Back at the peaceful airfield, Marcus and Sophia worked side by side on a vintage aircraft he had been lovingly restoring for several years. Not a single word was spoken about corporations, headlines, or media attention. Only shared laughter, gentle teasing, and meaningful glances when they thought the other wasn't looking. Sophia's hands, once used exclusively for signing important corporate documents, were now stained with honest engine oil, and she had never felt more alive or authentic. But by late afternoon, a big luxury SUV appeared at the security gate like an ominous storm cloud. Marcus's entire body tensed immediately. Sophia stood up slowly, recognizing the approaching vehicle. She knew exactly who it was before the driver even stepped out. David Richardson emerged with practiced corporate composure, dressed as if he were entering a federal courtroom instead of visiting an aircraft hangar. His expression was a careful mixture of relief and barely concealed frustration. "Miss Westbrook," he said with forced calm, "I'm tremendously relieved to see that you're safe and unharmed." "David," she replied evenly, wiping her hands clean with a shop rag. "What brings you all the way out here? You have the entire business world in a state of panic. Your aircraft missed its scheduled departure. The media is creating wild speculation stories. I'm here to escort you back to your responsibilities and your reality." She smiled politely but firmly. "You mean back to your version of my reality?" David's calculating eyes flicked dismissively toward Marcus. "And who exactly is this person?" Marcus stepped forward confidently, completely unfazed by the corporate intimidation tactics. "Just the guy who prevented her jet from exploding and killing everyone on board." David forced a tight, insincere laugh. "Right. And now you somehow think that minor service qualifies you to stand next to someone of her caliber and importance." Sophia's voice dropped to a calm but razor-sharp tone. "I don't need anyone's qualifications or permission to choose who I stand next to, David." David attempted to regain control of the situation. "There are major investors watching every move you make, Sophia. There are important appearances to maintain. You are a Westbrook, after all." "No," she said, walking toward him with growing confidence and authority. "I am Sophia, and for the first time in my adult life, I'm going to live like it, authentically and on my own terms." David opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again, recognizing the futility of his position. Sophia turned to Marcus with newfound determination. "Come with me." "Where to?" "To show the world that I'm not ashamed of the one person who saw me as a human being before seeing a corporate brand." Marcus hesitated briefly, understanding the magnitude of what she was asking, then nodded once with quiet resolve. She reached for his hand, and this time Marcus took it without any hesitation. The heavy hangar doors opened wide to reveal the waiting world outside. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks, but Sophia Westbrook walked forward confidently, oil-stained hands interlocked with the mechanics, wearing no makeup, no expensive jewelry, just absolute truth and authentic happiness. The world held its breath and watched in amazement. As they stepped together into the bright glare of the afternoon sun, the world outside the humble hangar seemed like an entirely different universe. Reporters rushed forward frantically, snapping photographs and shouting questions, but Sophia didn't flinch or show any sign of uncertainty. She no longer cared about their intrusive questions or harsh judgments. The only thing that truly mattered was the extraordinary man standing beside her. The man who had seen her for who she really was beneath all the corporate layers. Not the family legacy, not the billions in assets, but the real person who had been hiding beneath carefully constructed public personas for far too long. David was already back in his luxury vehicle, watching from a safe distance. His face showed a mixture of complete disbelief and growing frustration, his manicured fingers tapping impatiently against the leather steering wheel. He had never seen Sophia like this. So completely unafraid to live according to her own authentic values instead of corporate expectations. The years of carefully crafted public image, endless board meetings, and quarterly investment reports had all crumbled in a single transformative moment. "Sophia is absolutely reckless," David had warned her earlier during their tense phone conversation. "You can't just throw away everything you've built for some random mechanic. What about your future? What about the family legacy?" Sophia hadn't responded to his increasingly frantic messages. She knew exactly what he would say, knew how much he feared her breaking free from the corporate cage they had built together. The business empire they had constructed was indeed at risk, but she had come to a life-changing realization. She had spent her entire adult life building a future she had never actually wanted. It was finally time to stop pretending to be someone else. Marcus stood confidently beside her, his hands still bearing the honest stains of engine grease and hard work. He wasn't wealthy, didn't have influential connections, didn't even own a vehicle that would turn heads in a parking lot. But in that pivotal moment, Sophia realized that none of those superficial things mattered at all. What truly mattered was that Marcus had always been completely genuine and authentic. He had never wanted her for her famous name or vast wealth. He simply wanted her, the real person, not the public persona. As they walked together toward the waiting aircraft, Sophia's heart raced, not from the media frenzy swirling around them, but from the strange sense of peace that had settled over her like a warm blanket. She had never felt more alive, more authentic, more truly herself than she did in that extraordinary moment. For the first time in her carefully controlled life, she was making a choice purely for herself, not to meet the expectations of others. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Marcus asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper as they approached the gleaming jet. She smiled, a soft but completely genuine expression of joy and determination. "I have never been more certain of anything in my entire life." The aircraft gleamed brilliantly under the warm sunlight, while the world outside continued its chaotic frenzy of speculation and judgment. But Sophia didn't care about any of that external noise anymore. She only cared about what would happen next, about taking the bold steps that would shape the rest of her life according to her own authentic desires and values. They boarded the jet together, and the doors closed behind them with a heavy sense of finality. The world outside, the demanding investors, the intrusive media, the suffocating expectations, would all have to wait. For the first time in her adult life, Sophia was choosing what came next for herself. She wasn't bound by the corporate title that had been placed on her shoulders from birth. She was finally completely free. As the jet soared gracefully into the endless sky, leaving the hangar and her old, constrained life far behind in the distance, Sophia looked over at Marcus with wonder and gratitude. His face remained calm and peaceful, but there was a deep warmth in his eyes, a quiet understanding that she had been searching for throughout her entire adult life. "Where should we go?" the pilot asked, his voice crackling through the intercom system. Sophia thought for a moment, feeling more free and alive than she had in decades. "Wherever life takes us," she said, her voice steady and filled with a newfound sense of freedom and infinite possibility. Marcus's eyes met hers, and in that single meaningful glance, they both understood something profound. This wasn't just a new chapter in their individual stories. This was a completely new beginning, the start of the greatest adventure either of them could ever have imagined. The horizon stretched out before them, vast and limitless, just like their future together. And Sophia knew, as the jet continued its ascent into the boundless sky, that she had made the right choice. The world might never understand why she had chosen love over legacy, but for the first time in her life, she didn't need their approval or validation. She had discovered something far more valuable than corporate success or public admiration: her own authentic happiness and the courage to live life on her own terms. What did you think of this incredible story of unexpected love? Sometimes the most meaningful connections happen when we least expect them, between people from completely different worlds who see past surface appearances to discover something real and authentic. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.